Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions on the thing. We're continuing our summer of Star Wars this week with The Empire Strikes Back, but before we dive into that, this show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening or watching is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, click notification bells, all those fun things, and share the podcast with your friends. Joining me this week, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on?
Ah, damn it. You repositioned yourself and I had you framed all, so now you're like out of frame and stuff.
Damn it, I did not know that. I'm sorry.
I sent you a screenshot of whatever.
I've moved several times since that screenshot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I haven't been like keeping an eye on the OB, whatever. And Logan Wilkinson, how you doing, Logan?
I'm doing good. Hey, hi, hello.
Hello. Frank Bazzani joined us last week, and he basically could not make it. He had a last-minute thing come up this week, but hopefully he will be back for more future installments. So he left us as quickly as he returned, everybody. He was back for 1 week of that nerdy site stuff, and then just gone again. Don't you go off screen now too, Logan?
I'm sorry. I was getting my charger.
Okay.
Am I?
You're fine. I
Okay.
moved you. I
Okay.
grabbed your window and moved you back into position.
Sorry.
I'll just try and keep an eye on it, and if you jostle yourself around, it's part of it is just that your setup just has you like way off to one side of your screen, like naturally anyway. Like you do not center yourself in your own frame, and so I try and like compensate for that, and then if you shift around and you actually do center yourself, then I'm off. So just had to adjust. But as I said, today we're talking all about Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Why did we pick it? As we've mentioned, we are continuing our Summer of Star Wars, where we're going to be doing basically all of the Skywalker saga films, as well as pretty much anything else theatrically released, as well as I believe I don't envision we'll cut it shy of doing the Empire of Dreams documentary that is on Disney Plus as well. So we are here in week 2 for The Empire Strikes Back. What many argue is probably the best of the saga, but will we land there? Who knows? We'll find out. Originally released May 21st, 1980. Other notable releases of the time, you had the original Friday the 13th movie came out May 9th. You had the film Fame came out May 16th. You had The Shining came out the same weekend as Empire Strikes Back here on May 23rd. There was also a trivia fact that I saw that was basically like, hey, production costs on Empire Strikes Back went up because there was a fire on the set of The Shining and they were like working in the same studio spaces or something, so it impacted Empire Strikes Back as well. And then the last one I have here is The Blues Brothers came out June 20th of 1980 there. This has a runtime of, per Disney Plus, 2 hours and 7 minutes, but it's probably like 2 hours 4 minutes, just like last week's was like 3 minutes of added credits and stuff, international credits on Disney Plus. In the Star Wars timeline, of course, this falls in between Episode 4, A New Hope, which we talked about last week, which came out May 25th, 1977. And up next will be Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, May 25th, 1983. And actually, I guess technically, I should have thrown in the Christmas special in here, but since
what Christmas special? There's no such thing.
It's all being disavowed. I did not. The roll call, who's who of the film. We have Irvin Kershner taking over as directing duties here. Prior to this, he had done Never Say Never Again. Actually, after this, I believe, maybe he went, I don't know, somewhere along the line.
81?
He did Never Say Never Again, which I pulled in here for the Bond reference because, of course, Logan is #1 Bond fan. And then the only other one I really recognized from his credits was RoboCop 2. So really, like he hit it big with this one, and he definitely had some work before Empire Strikes Back, but they were more of the time films that just have not really resonated with modern day. So I did not pull him in here. The writers, of course, we have Lawrence Kasdan and Lee Brackett working on the screenplay for this. This was Lawrence Kasdan's debut as a screenwriter, but he, of course, would go on to much acclaim with his work on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Return of the Jedi, The Bodyguard, Wyatt Earp, and then most recently, he's continued on with Star Wars, having helped write The Force Awakens and Solo, a Star Wars story. And Lee Brackett there, another, like, she had a storied kind of career leading up to this, but nothing that really jumped out at me as something I recognized. But she did also write the basic story for the Shadows of the Empire game that would come out after this one.
Okay, yeah.
And then, of course, we have the story by, once again, George Lucas, who we ran through a whole bunch of his stuff last time, so I won't necessarily go into that again. And then starring, there's going to be a lot of repeats, so I won't run through all of their credits that we did, but I will, highlight the new people that came on board. But we have Mark Hamill returning as Luke Skywalker, Harrison Ford returning as Han Solo, of course, Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, Alec Guinness making a one-day filming appearance as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, Kenny Baker as R2-D2, Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca, and David Prowse and James Earl Jones continuing their double-header of Darth Vader, his body and voice respectively. New people we have into the fold on this one. We have Billy D. Williams, of course, as Lando Calrissian. Prior to this, he'd kind of made a name for himself in the made-for-TV movie Brian Song, where I believe he won an Emmy for that. And then would go on to work on movies like Lady Sings the Blues. Looking at his Wikipedia, he'd also done he had a pretty good deal in kind of the blaxploitation market of films for a number of years there in the 70s, leading into this. Obviously came into Empire Strikes Back here, and then would go on to be the unrealized Harvey Dent Two-Face in Batman 1989. But then he did eventually get to play Two-Face in the Lego Batman movie. They brought him back for that. We have Frank Oz, of course, making his debut as Yoda, who, best known as a Muppets performer, being the voices of Bert, Cookie Monster, and Grover from Sesame Street, as well as Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Animal, and Sam the Eagle from The Muppets. And if you watched Knives Out, you could see him in the flesh in that one because he was the lawyer in Knives Out that everybody goes to see.
Wild cameo.
Yeah. Yep.
Just a crazy cameo. Great though.
Yep.
Oh man, Frank Oz is just an absolute treasure of a human being.
Indeed.
Yeah, 100%.
Ian McDiarmid sort of makes his debut as the Emperor. He was not in the original 1980 version, but he is in basically the versions that we're watching nowadays because he was added into or replaced the Emperor scenes starting with the 2004 DVD re-release. Because technically he didn't really make his Star Wars debut until Return of the Jedi, but he's in here now. That was another trivia thing that I don't think I pulled in, but it was basically the original Emperor was a woman with monkey eyes or something, with chimpanzee eyes.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the monkey eyes. Yeah,
voiced by Clive Barrel, maybe, or something like that. Voiced by somebody else who is still listed as the voice of the Emperor in the end credits of the film, despite not actually being that voice in anymore. So hooray for probably
Clive Barrel,
Actors Equity or whatever, or Screen Actors Guild credit. Well, I know, because a whole thing about this movie is how Lucas basically burned his relationship with the guilds to the ground. And then lastly, I wanted to pull in a couple little roles here of actors who would go on to much bigger and better things. Not that Star Wars isn't good, but much bigger things, or maybe not bigger, just other things. Julian Glover is playing Admiral Veers here, i.e. the guy in the AT-AT. He would go on to be Donovan in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as well as Grand Maester Pycelle in the Game of Thrones series. And then
wait, what?
Yeah, he's Grand Maester Pycelle.
Oh, there you go. Good for him.
Yep. Good long storied career. And then John Ratzenberger makes one of his earliest acting roles here as miscellaneous Hoth guy. He, of course, would go on to be in Cheers for many, many years and is, most commonly seen and will most likely be seen on this show in any Pixar movie we do, because he is, of course, Pixar's Good Luck Charm and doing a whole ton of cameos there. The trivia. As we touched on here, in order to avoid sharing creative rights, George Lucas decided to avoid using a major studio to finance this movie, instead bankrolling the $18 million production himself, using a combination of his profits from Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope and a bank loan. Although the move was risky, it paid off several times over. Lucas recovered his investment within 3 months of the movie's release, and then he showed his gratitude far beyond the Hollywood norm by sharing the profits with his employees, nearly $5 million in bonuses. Here's what I was mentioning earlier with the Holy Guild stuff. To preserve the dramatic opening of these Star Wars movies, George Lucas insisted on moving all the credits to the end of the movie. However, although the Writers Guild and Directors Guild had begrudgingly allowed this on Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, because that movie wasn't expected to be very successful, they resented the trend being continued on this movie. So first they tried to pull this movie from release, but were unsuccessful. Then they fined Lucas heavily and tried to fine Irvin Kershner, but Lucas paid all of the fines himself, nearly $250,000, and Lucas then bitterly dropped his membership in the Writers Guild, Directors Guild, and the Motion Picture Association of America, a move that has hindered his hiring choices on later movies. Because basically people didn't... Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, this is the thing that's like a whole big plot point in Empire of Dreams, and less so for this movie, and more so because of the consequences of it in Return of the Jedi, where he wanted Steven Spielberg to direct the movie in Return of the Jedi, but Steven Spielberg couldn't because he was a part of the Directors Guild, and so instead he got Richard Marquette, who was like a fucking shit show. Like, there was like this whole thing about how like George Lucas basically had to like ghost direct the movie, because it like had so many production problems in it because he couldn't get the director he wanted. And also, imagine if we could have gotten a Steven Spielberg Star Wars movie. Like, what would that even have been? Like, it's like such a weird, tantalizing like what if. Even more so for me, where it's like, we'll get to it next week. Like, it's already my favorite Star Wars movie, and like how different that movie would have felt if it had been done by Spielberg. I feel like. Like the consequences of that.
I don't know. I often think, like, I know he wanted to get him to do it. I would have really, as much as I would have loved to have seen him do it, I don't know if there's so much about Return of the Jedi's, like, it has its faults, but like, we'll get into it when we watch the film, but it has its faults, but its faults are also a really big part of its charm as a film. And so I think personally, like, Return of the Jedi is probably the most charming of the original trilogy in the way that it approaches like just different, lots of different themes of like more abstract themes that it approaches in a much more cozier way that is in direct contrast to how very visceral and real, and I don't want to say gritty because it's not gritty because it's sci-fi and space and everything's super clean, but in the real like in the cogs of it's a very Empire is a very small story timeline wise. Like, it takes place over a very short period of time, which all the films do, obviously, but what it does is it's very much in the middle of everything. It's the second film as part of a trilogy. It is in the middle of a war, like we literally get dropped into the middle of a war effort. There's a lot of really great stuff about Empire. What makes Empire great is in contrast to what I think makes Return of the Jedi really charming and special. So when I think of like what Steven Spielberg would have brought to that, I'm wondering, what Steven Spielberg are we going to get with this? Are we getting E.T., Phone Home? Like, as much as I hate the film E.T., I can't argue that there is a sense of comfort and like warmth to the character interactions and everything with young kids and everything. But Spielberg specifically has this ability to create this very like homeliness, like not homeliness, but like this sense of not cozy, but just comfort in the way he approaches things? Or were we going to get blockbuster Jaws, Steven Spielberg with like the smart
Jurassic
cuts
Park, right?
and like like Jurassic, like your Jurassic Park Steven Spielberg with the tension and the drama? Like, which Steven Spielberg would we have gotten for that one? So I like it. That's a weird that's a weird thing to think about when you actually.
It's such a weird what if, right?
I mean, I think
the
answer
it could have gone in either way. So
yeah,
I think the answer we get Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas collaboration. You know, we get that's the two of them plus aliens. So
God no.
I think it's interesting, and like we'll get more into this obviously next week, so I don't want to like dwell too much on Jedi here, but like the one thing you said that I agree with is that like I think Jedi is the, almost for lack of a better word, the weirdest in terms of the original trilogy, like embracing the fact that like, yeah, this is a galaxy, and it's like it took the like Mos Eisley scene and was like, what if we just make this like way more of the movie, and have just like weird shit for the entire first act basically, and so I think it's really interesting to see what another director would have done with that, like what Lucas's kind of original vision would have been for that. And like, it's okay we didn't get necessarily Spielberg on Jedi because it basically led to Indiana Jones happening, so they could team up on that. So it worked out all right in the end.
Yep.
Mostly.
I will say, in contrast to that, we get very little. I noticed it this time around.
Yeah.
There is very little aliens in Empire Strikes Back. Very few.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you guys were talking. Which
makes the almost all white cast all the more like. It's
It's basically like, apart from creatures like the Tauntauns or whatever, it's Yoda and it's the Ugnaughts, and is there anything else?
Ugnaughts, Tauntauns, Yoda.
I don't think we have any other.
The closest thing you get to anything else is the dude who has like the built-in like cyborg stuff.
Lobot,
yeah,
Lobot, yeah.
But he's like an android or whatever, so
cyborg, whatever.
One of the little bits of trivia that I didn't pull in originally, but since we were kind of talking about like a lot of the behind the scenes drama, and I imagine this is also featured heavily in the Empire of Dreams story, is George Lucas had originally planned to only executive produce and finance the movie, leaving directorial duties to Irvin Kershner and day-to-day producing duties to Gary Kurtz. Directing Star Wars Episode 4 had left Lucas exhausted and sick, and he intended to take time off to focus on the expansion of Lucasfilm, the company, and spending more time with his then-wife, Marcia Lucas, so they could start a family and finish construction of Skywalker Ranch. However, when production on this movie ran over budget and behind schedule, Lucas had to step in, take a more hands-on role, going to location to oversee filming and even directing portions of the movie. A disastrous rough cut of the movie proved incoherent during screenings, and facing the possibility of financial ruin, Lucas then re-edited the movie himself with even worse results. Extensive reshoots and further post-production effects work put enormous strain on his health, his marriage, and his relationships with Kershner and Kurtz. Though the movie proved to be an enormous critical and commercial success, Lucas would never work with Kurtz again, and his marriage dissolved a couple of years later. So, the cost of artistry, really.
Yep.
Again, they go into that again as well for like the bad production problems with Jedi as well, and like I feel like they focus more on the marriage falling apart with like Jedi's story in Empire Dreams.
Yeah, Jedi's story.
I think that's when like it fully falls apart. Yeah,
because after Empire, he and his wife separate, and then during Jedi, the divorce happens. So it's like, wow, he's building like this Empire of Dreams while his own reality is drastically falling apart in the most terrible ways.
That documentary is so beautiful. It's such a good documentary.
Also, like he and his wife at this point in time had adopted like kids. And like it's wild when you go back to like look at that sort of stuff. But I do want to say that one of my favorite parts of Empire Dreams, and we'll get into it if we eventually watch it, is the creation of Dagobah. Like I can't wait to talk.
About
it.
Like, yes,
because
oh my God, I can't wait to
is
talk
a
about
100% functional, real set for
like
a period of time. It was a
real
place that existed inside of a studio, and everything was like physical there. From
I
how
don't even-
gross
yeah.
and murky is that water? It's real life gross and murky. Like they have things, they talk about it and they get into it, but like things grew in there. Like things were born and grew and lived and died in Dagobah on set. So
Yeah, I don't even want to.
I love it.
Spoil
I love
the
Dagobah
stuff.
so
Just it's so good. That whole part of the documentary.
So
Cool. So segment I'm adding into the trivia here is the "I have a feeling about this," which of course is one of the iconic lines that just everybody gets throughout the series, or there's always one in every movie. And Leia says it in this one. Following up that, in 1999, Carrie Fisher penned an essay for Newsweek on her Star Wars experience and recounted the time that she and Ford pulled an all-nighter at a party with Eric Idle and the Rolling Stones. Eric Idle, of course, of Monty Python fame.
Monty Python.
Eric had just come home from filming Life of Brian in Tunisia, Fisher wrote. He bought this drink that he said they gave the extras so they'd work longer. I called it Tunisian Table Cleaner. As a rule, I'm allergic to alcohol, and Harrison doesn't really drink either, but that night there was a makeshift party. The Rolling Stones were there. We stayed up all night and drank the table cleaner and never went to sleep. When Fisher and Ford arrived to set the next morning, we weren't hungover, Fisher wrote. We were, like the extras in Tunisia, more than willing to work. That morning, we shot our arrival at Cloud City, where we meet Billy D. Williams, and it's one of the very few times in the series both Harrison and I smile. To this day, Eric is a proud papa of his impact on the trilogy. I thought that was a fun little one. Crossing over universes and stuff.
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I did not know that.
Eric Idle's great.
So it was basically cocaine water is what they all drank.
Pretty much. We mentioned this earlier, but in the original version of the film, the scenes in which Darth Vader converses with the Emperor used to look a lot different. Though many viewers automatically associate the character with actor Ian McDiarmid, the original Emperor was an old woman with chimpanzee eyes and the voice of Clive Revel. You can see the article I pulled this from says you can see both versions side by side above, but I clearly don't have that yet.
It's funny for me because
it's really weird looking.
Well, it's not even that. Like, even to this day, that's the version I think of. And so every time I watch a movie, I'm always like, the hell is Ian McDiarmid? Like, I'm always so confused. I'm like, why is he here? It's like, all right, they switched it out. But, like, I liked that version, especially watching it as a kid, because, like, that is such a, like, it's such a weird, like, twisted, terrifying thing of, like, what is the Emperor? Like, who is he?
Yeah.
It makes the Emperor so much more alien than humanoid.
Yeah.
Which I think was the
it's really
intention,
neat.
but by the time we get to Return of the Jedi, I mean, let's face some facts here. The Emperor is the Emperor. You can't from the voice to the acting to like just to the face to the do it.
Yes.
Just that. Just do it.
Yeah.
Skywalker. Like it's so unbelievably classic. He's such a classic, iconic, like film, like movie villain.
Yeah.
So I do not prefer the woman in a robe with chimpanzee eyes. I don't prefer that one. I prefer the one they redid.
Yeah, I just feel like I've probably seen that one so little, or like Ian McDiarmid really is like so iconically the Emperor that I had completely forgotten that was a thing prior to 2004, because obviously like that's when I would have been watching and being introduced to the series, and even in the in the original special editions and stuff, it was still chimpanzee eyes, and it wasn't until after McDiarmid came back for all of the prequels that they added him into Episode 5. So,
The man makes Star Wars more fun.
Yeah.
He just makes Star Wars more fun.
I mean, does he? Would we get? We'll test that theory when we get to Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, I forgot.
We sure will.
I blocked that out of my mind and memory. I take it back. That's not a true statement. That's a very It was a true statement before what was it, 2018, 2019?
Yeah.
Before then, it was a true statement. It is no longer a true statement.
As I mentioned earlier, during principal photography, it remained unclear if Sir Alec Guinness would return as Obi-Wan Kenobi, as he had just had an eye operation at the time. He finally did agree and worked just one day on the movie, Wednesday, September 5th, 1979. He arrived at 8:30 a.m. and completed his scenes by 1 p.m., for which he was paid a 0.25 percentage point of the movie's gross, which would be worth millions of dollars. So, not bad for
the best deal of anyone. Yeah, just
yeah,
Man knew what he was coming into. I'll do it for, what was it, half a percentage point?
a quarter percentage.
A quarter, like, I'll take 0.25% of the film.
of this movie,
and you'll get me
which is going to
for,
gross like 600.
he showed up at what time?
8:30 to 8:30
8:30
a.m.
in the
to
morning.
1 p.m.
One
Probably had a break
worked a
for
half
lunch.
day. Yeah,
Like- Like, easiest money, like, easiest
Yeah.
millions of dollars anybody's ever made.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that's
I was gonna say, right.
that is 4.5 hours. So by today's standards, at least he wouldn't need a lunch break. So I don't know what SAG would have
I think
dictated at the
like
time
maybe
or
not
whatever,
maybe
but-
not a full lunch break, but craft services in between scenes. I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
Oh wait, no, it was
Well, I mean-
Empire, right? So that means
I mean-
that they,
I mean-
never mind. That's out the window then.
Well, like also he's not doing scenes with other people. He's standing on a soundstage recording his stuff and then being digitally added to other people later. So, yeah.
I actually
Anyway.
always wondered how they did the digital like implementation back in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine. I mean, it's like the premise is probably the same as now, where they shot it and then they probably made it a little transparent through the editing process or whatever, and then just
And then put that on the film. Okay,
Yeah.
I can see that then. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been a much more laborious intensive and very scary. Like that would have been. Oof, I would not want that job.
it would have been way easier to do that than what they do with like Tron, where they filmed the stuff and then like animated every cell of or every frame of that movie on top of the live actors. So
That's accurate.
two different approaches to to technology in the 80s. Last little bit of trivia here. George Lucas decided that a battle on an ice planet was necessary because he felt it was too easy to cheat in space because the background was black and you could hide errors easily. With a white background, the effects crew would have to work much harder and the effects would be much more impressive. So
He's
obviously-
right.
like obviously I didn't pull in things in here like Han Solo, like Harrison Ford didn't know if he was going to come back, so they they did a whole bunch of stuff around that, and that's why he's in carbonite and all that stuff. I figured some of those are just kind of the more everybody knows those things, but also when I went to like look, so last week I obviously gave like here's the box office gross and stuff. And I have no idea where those numbers came from last week as I'm looking back at it now, because I could not like find them or recreate them. So I was like, and they did not match what I looked at when I looked at like, domestic grosses or worldwide grosses. So if I was completely off on those numbers last week, sorry, I have no idea. Like I couldn't go back and find where I'd originally pulled them from. So I didn't even bother this time around. It was the biggest movie of 1980 again. So,
Sure.
they're still doing
Yeah.
fine. But yeah.
Arguably the biggest movie of the decade. So
So what did we think? How does it hold up here in 41 years later? How does The Empire Strikes Back hold up? Logan.
go ahead.
Let me kick it over to Logan first.
Yeah. I mean, Empire Strikes Back is great, right? I think that has remained true 41 years after it came out, which is absurd to say. I think Empire has always been a weird Star Wars movie. And I think it's never... There was definitely a period in my life where like I wanted to like Empire more than I did, and I've come around, and this movie's fantastic. Like it's a great movie, but having just watched them all, or having just watched the original trilogy, certainly last year over like a weekend basically, and then obviously again now, I will say that I stand by my assertion that like I think Return of the Jedi is pretty clearly better to me. As a Star Wars movie, and like they're very different things, like Cameron alluded to. Like they're very different movies. They're going for very different themes and very different things. And like what Empire does very well. I think part of it is just like what I'm looking for. Jedi is kind of giving me that. Empire is not, but I mean, it's Empire Strikes Back. It is a phenomenal film. I mean, it is one of the like defining movies of the '80s. One of the handful best sci-fi films ever made, probably. I mean it's great. One of the big things for me, having watched it twice now in like a year, is the fact that it's really interesting that this is a movie where like none of the main characters really interact. Like the cast is much more like split apart and fractured. In particular, Mark Hamill's just like acting to himself for 90% of the movie.
So yeah, I watched this twice in the last week, and during the second rewatch, I was realizing, I was like, yeah, he's either on his own with a tauntaun or whatever, then he's in a snowspeeder with a guy who dies pretty quickly, and then he's against a puppet, and then he's against R2-D2, and then he's against Darth Vader, or by himself for most of that sequence. So yeah, it's like, he's really kind of just doing his own thing for most of this movie.
And it's really and like it's really cool, right? Like I think, like I've never agreed with the people who are like Luke sucks or Luke is lame or Luke is not an interesting character. And certainly I think that if you watch Empire, it just becomes so obvious to me that that's not the case. I think he carries so much of the movie. This is obviously where Han and Leia really, I think, begin to kind of spark with each other, and their chemistry is great. I think it drives so much of, obviously all of their scenes is so much about the kind of back and forth, but Empire to me is sort of the stripped down follow-up to A New Hope, right? Whereas New Hope is like introducing you to the galaxy and this whole new universe, right? And Empire Strikes Back is really about Luke, Han, and Leia, and even like all the other characters like R2, C-3PO, Chewbacca kind of fade in the background a little bit more. And it is just like these three characters' stories, they're split up, and it's them going doing their thing. And like even Lando doesn't get introduced until way into the movie, right? Like it is just these three characters' kind of stories carrying you forward. And also Empire Strikes Back has Yoda, and he's just the OG. He's the dopest. So it's also rad for that. Love that little guy.
Nice. Cameron, what do you think?
I will slightly variable from what Logan was saying. Here's the thing. I think without a doubt, on paper, Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie. It may not be your favorite Star Wars movie, but I think when you stack them all up next to each other, I think Empire takes it at the end of the day. Now, it's not my favorite Star Wars movie. We watched my favorite Star Wars movie, A New Hope. A New Hope is my personal favorite. It like Logan said, it's a film that is very different from Empire. It hits different notes for me. I love A New Hope more than the rest of the trilogy, than the rest of the saga. That being said, I can look at the structure, acting, effects, like all the things that Empire does better, and it does it in a way that is it is a marvel and a masterpiece in so many different ways, and different aspects to it. Because where A New Hope was creating the wheel, Empire said, cool, I'm not going to recreate the wheel. I'm going to refine it. I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to deconstruct it. This isn't a story about hope. It's not a story about good feelings and good things and love conquering all. Like, this is a story about, and what it really is a story about faith. Belief in that which cannot be proven or seen. That's the typical definition of faith. And it's a film about that on multiple levels. From the very beginning, from Luke, he's hanging upside down. He's about to get devoured by this space bear, or the snow bear on Hoth. That, of course, was they shot that in order to give Luke a reason for having facial scarring.
No, that's one of those that's one of those like myths. It's been debunked, yeah. Because the long held rumor was, well, Mark Hamill was in a car accident, so they had to do that. But no, they've kind of come out and been like, no.
Well, kibosh that then. Never mind then. But back to my point though is that he's upside down in this Wampa's den, and he has nothing that he can use to save himself. So he falls back on what he has, which is the Force. It's his faith in this thing that Ben Kenobi taught him. And he uses the Force, gets the lightsaber. We see all of that. We see Han. Everybody's telling Han, he's probably checked in somewhere else. Yada yada. Don't worry about it. And Han's like, no, I'm going to check it out myself. I'm going to verify it. And then it's like from the very beginning, it's about these three people, and it's about the faith they hold in what they believe in, and it's the faith in each other.
Yeah.
And it's that faith that these two other people, other than me, are the most important people in the galaxy. And I will do what I have to do to help them. Whether it's, there's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful moment between Han and Luke. After Luke's been healed up, he's about to go out in the speeder. Han's still doing last minute repairs on the Falcon. And they have this silent moment between the two of them that just radiates this feeling of, just captures everything from moments of love and empathy and compassion and caring about each other. You know, Han can say, "That's two you owe me," on his way out. But when it's just the two of them, it's this very deep moment of real connection, real special connection. And it's something that
you feel the years that they've had together at that point.
You do. You feel the camaraderie that they've built between each other in that nod and see ya. Like the faith that we'll see each other again after this. We're going to make it out of this.
Yeah.
And it's the idea and because we see the Rebel Alliance. We don't know. We find out in the scroll, but there's actually a really, really solid novel. I highly recommend people go out and read it or just find the summary of it. But it's essentially of the fall of after the Rebels get that major victory on the Death Star, the Empire strikes back harder than ever. And Darth Vader storms the Yavin 4 base. And there's these intense moments between between Vader, Luke, and Leia. Way before Return of the Jedi reveals that they're siblings. There's this there's this unspoken connection between those three characters. And it's really cool. And like people speculated it for years what that meant, and then we finally found out. But we see this idea of like this faith in each other, and it really culminates to two major points. One, when Leia allows herself to have faith in Han, that he is somebody, it's not just letting down your guard, it's letting this person who has made it very clear his intention is to leave you, is to go and pay off his debt, but having faith that he will be there for you. It goes to that very, like, that point where, and everybody makes it like, oh, Han's such a smooth talker, I know, but that's, and like, when I was younger, that's how I read the scene as well, but like, that I know scene speaks differently to me now. It's, I've known, like, you said you love me, I know, like, I've known for a while now. Like, it's very much of a more humble, of, a very non-smarmy way of saying, like, I know and I love you too, in such a really great way that I think Harrison Ford just delivers pitch perfect. And when he decided to cut out he changed the line himself, because he didn't feel the I love you too felt natural. He knew what he was doing in that moment as an actor, but it culminates to that moment between Han and Leia having faith in one another to get through what they're going through and just believing in one another. And then it goes back to Luke. It's funny, Luke and Leia being siblings makes, even though they weren't raised together, they are the biggest doubters in this entire series. They doubt everything. Leia constantly questions things and like feels that way when she's younger. And Luke, he just doesn't have faith. He doesn't have, like, he struggles with believing in himself, believing in the Force, understanding the scope and power of the Force. Because when he's with Yoda is doing I'm a kooky alien on this swamp planet. I'm stealing your food. Ho ho ho.
So good.
I want the flashlight. Beat R2-D2 with the cane. Like, really great classic moments. But what he's doing is he's testing Luke's faith and belief in his mission, what brought him to Dagobah. He took that first step. He took that first leap. But what is he doing when he makes the decision not to rendezvous with everybody else? He believes in the vision that he saw of Obi-Wan Kenobi in the snow. So he takes that first leap to go to Dagobah. Planet, like Dagobah system, a random planet he's never heard of before. and goes down there. But the moment he gets there, he's talking to R2 when they're like, oh yeah, no, I trust me, R2, like I believe that this is what we're supposed to be doing. And then he lands there, and all of a sudden he's just filled with all this doubt.
He crashes there. He crashes there. He doesn't land there.
That's fair. He crashes there.
Smashes
and it's like
into that swamp.
And Yoda, when Yoda finally just like gives up the act, he talks to Obi when he says he has no faith. I can't teach him. He doesn't believe. Like, and it's about Luke's journey into having faith. Like, the Force may not be the answer that he's looking for, is what Luke's journey is about. The Force isn't necessarily the answer. It's the people that you care about. It's the connections and bonds that you make. It's the antithetical purpose of what the Jedi say they're about. No bonds, being purposeful towards purpose itself, versus caring about other people and being empathetic and making those connections, making those bonds between family and friends.
Well, was that what the Jedi were about at this point in time?
At this point in time,
I feel like
Empire,
I feel like that's a lot of
anymore.
Right, exactly. Like that. No, I'm not even saying like. Obviously, I'm saying like that seems like a much like the Sith rule of two. All of that is a much more prequels kind of.
It came 20 years later. Yeah,
it came 20 years later.
Doing
Sure.
it again. Yeah.
I apologize. You're right.
Yeah.
Actually, we should not be doing future spoilery nonsense. We're talking about in the time of.
I mean, not necessarily like future spoiler or whatever. It's just it's thinking about that in the context that originally it came out, and originally, we didn't have this whole mentality of the Jedi aren't about attachments and all that stuff.
That's true.
It was just, hey, they're space wizards with
they're
light
space
swords.
Wizards. Yeah, with laser swords.
Yeah,
you're right, and thank you for pointing that out, Trevor. I put it into like a more broader context that we would know about now, but it's
recontextualizing movies, and that's one of the things I think about, especially as we're watching through these ones a lot. Like I think about multiple times throughout these last couple movies so far. I think about moments in the prequels where I'm like, that moment in the prequel just makes these movies worse. As opposed to something like, and obviously we'll dive into this eventually, but like Rogue One, I think makes Star Wars: A New Hope a better movie because of what it sets up.
Yeah,
and I think the prequels fail on a lot of those fronts. The prequels set up a whole bunch of unnecessary things that then, like in hindsight, end up making things in 4, 5, and 6 make less sense or stuff like that, or didn't need to be explained or whatever.
But anyway, just to wrap up what I was saying. Anyway, so it's about Luke finding out that the faith he needs to have is in his friends and his cause, and it's less about that. And so I love that his journey throughout the film is about that. So,
I mean, it's an interesting takeaway, especially like the ending takeaway that you have there is interesting because I would argue that his faith in his friends or whatever that he has there at the end or whatever draws him back to his friends leads to a lot of people's downfalls and leads to obviously
his rise, right?
The
not
failing
listening
of
to
this
Yoda's
movie
advice there,
But I would argue that he has his faith shaken though when he's told that Darth Vader is his father, but he needed in hindsight the way he deals with Vader in Return of the Jedi, and the way he deals with it is not the way that he would have been taught had he stayed on Dagobah.
Oh, I mean, ultimately, I think the faith argument is an interesting one that I haven't really thought about too much extensively. So, without really diving deep into that, I look at this movie as we have to since now we know we're going to set up a trilogy and there's going to be a next movie, we have to tear down all of our characters so that we can build them back up the next time and give them their triumphant victory. And that's what we end up seeing in a lot of this movie, obviously. Where every character ends up here is oh yeah, the Empire won. So it makes the audience that much more excited for when we can all come back and see these characters triumph and blow up another Death Star and all that stuff. A couple things I pulled together while Cameron was going. additional trivia that you referenced, an oft-quoted myth is that the Wampa attack on Luke was devised to explain the actual scars on Mark Hamill's face because he had been involved in a car crash and had to have reconstructive surgery. Hamill did indeed
Yeah, it was
survive
really
a serious
nasty
car
crash.
crash in January 1977, but he did not have any visible scars by the time this movie began filming over 2 years later. So that was that one. And then specifically as it relates to the I love you, I know scene, when Han Solo is about to be frozen, Princess Leia says, I love you. In the original script, Han Solo was supposed to say, just remember that, Leia, because I'll be back. But at the time of filming, Harrison Ford wasn't entirely certain he would want to come back for a third movie. And there is a recurring legend that his I know was ad-libbed. However, Alan Arnold's book, Once Upon a Galaxy, a journal of the making of The Empire Strikes Back, includes a transcription of the discussion between Ford and director Irvin Kershner, in which Ford suggested the line. So it was brought out. It's not just like they were filming the scene and he decided to throw out the script. Some additional stuff there.
I can see how the way I phrased it would infer that I thought that.
Mm-hmm.
I was under the impression that the line, I thought the line was "I love you too," but
yeah,
I actually so I did not know about the just remember that because I'll be back.
Yeah.
Which also feels weird,
and
like in the context of Terminator years later. I'll be back.
Sure. And that's like, I mean, this is specifically in the original script, so there might have been a draft later that was "I love you too" or whatever.
Yeah.
It's one of those, because I've heard
That's
like
the line I've heard,
a variety of different versions of that story over the years.
Yeah.
Star Wars is a weird like a weird set of films that they have a weird mythology about them that are totally false. But have been so widely spread in so many different panels and everything else over the years that it's taken on a life of its own, and it's just like it's the mythology of Star Wars as a film.
I don't even
it's
see.
very meta, it's weird.
I view it less as they're false and more as they're all half true, right? Like I think they're all. Star Wars is such a unique pop culture phenomena, right? Like it is possibly, arguably, the biggest pop culture film thing. Or just thing, not even film, in the last like 4 or 5 decades, right? And so there's inevitably going to be a lot of, oral histories and stories about it, and like behind the scenes secrets that aren't actually true or half true kind of things. And so it kind of envelops everything around them, right? And so I kind of always view it as these are all a little bit true and all a little bit not true. And just kind of find the ones that I enjoy the most and pick like, yeah, that's the ones I'm going to like stick with, because it all kind of came from somewhere. And because you could ask probably 8 different members of the cast what happened and get 8 different stories on something like this, to say nothing of the fact that we're talking 40 years after the fact now. So
exactly, yeah.
Half the cast isn't even there any longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the, so as I was rewatching it this week, thinking about this show in context kind of thing, I found myself thinking, especially the beginning of the movie is really like, we spend a lot more time on Hoth than I like feel I remember as a kid. Like we spend the first quarter of the movie just on Hoth. And there's a lot of slowness there to it. Obviously that is, intentional and building up the stakes and stuff, but that's like, when I think about like, how does the movie hold up? It would not hold up by today's standards. Like this would have to be a much more clippy kind of movie to accommodate the modern audience that has, is pulled in a billion of other different directions and stuff like that. If this movie came out now and didn't have like the legacy behind it, it would be one of those movies of like, it'd be really good if they cut out like 15 to 30 minutes or something like that. It's really good, but it'd be better if it, they could have cut out 15 to 30 minutes or something like that. It'd be one of those kinds of conversation pieces, I think.
Modern day audiences are uncultured swine, is what Trevor's saying.
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
It's true.
But then there is that issue that we kind of already touched on of like, it does, because it splits the cast away. It's the same kind of complaint that a lot of people had with like The Last Jedi or The Force, not The Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker most recently, in that like when you don't like you had these great characters brought together and then you split them apart for storytelling purposes. It's like, well, but I really want one of the things I enjoyed about A New Hope is is seeing Han and Luke, together and play off each other and all that stuff. And when you kind of break that apart, it does lose a little bit of the magic here. So it's weird. Like, I still think it's like, yeah, I still think it's a better movie overall, but like I found some of the sheen like wearing off watching it this time through, thinking about a lot of those things, thinking about the idea that, you know, I don't understand the timelines of this movie really, because Luke's story has him theoretically out there on Dagobah for like weeks of training with Yoda or something like that. And like that's all happening while the Millennium Falcon and crew are basically like playing hide from the Emperor for like maybe a day or two. Who like what I like certainly not the weeks of training that Luke is on. And then they all come together on Bespin and stuff. And so it's like what, and the way it's like intercut throughout the movie, it's just I don't know necessarily like it's one of those things I never thought about as a kid or whatever, but now I think about it more in kind of the language of storytelling and realize and like verisimilitude and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I have no idea, what level of time has passed for the Falcon and crew, seemingly not a ton because they're still dealing with the same engine troubles throughout the entire movie, while Luke has gone on this complete far-flung adventure and worked to become a Jedi. And it's like obviously it's another element of this is almost like this movie exists pre epic montages that we would see in like later 80s movies, that I feel like I almost wonder like what would a Jedi training montage have looked like if this had come out after the Rockies and stuff like that. Because
Karate Kid.
Like yeah, after a Karate Kid or something like that, because like it the training is so much more drawn out there, and because of that it feels like so much more time is passing for Luke, than if it had just been like a quick little montage and we see him struggling to move stones with his mind, and then he's moving stones with his mind, and we see all that. So yeah, that's like it's weird looking at it now through a critical lens, or through a more critical lens at least, and just like asking these questions that I definitely didn't ask when I was watching this as a kid, or even 10 years ago when I was watching this movie, and not really too worried about those kinds of things. And it did,
I thought about it as well.
It doesn't like drastically like take down my thoughts on the movie, but it is, those are the kinds of things I think about now as like, if this movie were made today, how would elements of it be different? And then especially I think about it in the context of the current Star Wars fan base, and what Twitter Star Wars would react to if Twitter Star Wars had existed in Empire Strikes Back era and all that stuff, and
insufferable monsters.
Would we see a Last Jedi level of like pushback against this after A New Hope? Like, hey, everything ends up badly for these characters. What would that audience have felt like now? And what would that look like, in a social media age? Like, those are the kinds of things I think about when I'm watching this. Like I applaud the risk taking and the deviation from the like, well, let's do what we did last time and just do more of it or something like that. And I will also say, still, like, even though I like the opening sequence on Hoth feels long and feels dragged out, like when we get to flying snow speeders around like that, and doing the AT-AT fights and stuff, like doing the trench run in video games and doing taking down an AT-AT in Rogue Squadron and stuff like that are, like, without a doubt for me, some of the coolest video game moments that you can have. So like, it's always fun getting to see them again on screen here. And that does take me back to like a giddy childhood kind of self. But then watching them like play out, it's like, even there I ask myself like what, like, in a normal situation, what are the tow cables used for? Like, are they pulling things out of the snow and stuff like that? Like, what is the purpose of a snowspeeder that has like a pilot and then a gunner pointing the other direction behind you? Like, it doesn't seem practical, but
I
they
think
fit for
yeah.
for this movie and for this this design of this combat encounter and stuff. But like those are things I think about now, and we're like that's weird, especially because like Dak dies and then Luke just has a dead body right behind him for the rest of this fight. Whoops.
But I mean, that's the reality of a fighter pilot. If your guy behind you dies, he's like there. You can't just like get rid of him.
Yeah, it's just not something I think about in like a
Sure.
real militaristic like I don't think about that degree of like I think of fighter pilots as like mostly one-man jets or something like that.
They are now, but I mean, if you've ever seen the
I mean, like back in the Red Baron days, yeah, I know you had like your pilot and then your gunner or whatever, but
well, so your gunner's not just your gunner; it's also a lot of times it's your navigator, it's your somebody who's keeping an eye on like flight levels. So, but in this one in particular, they mentioned actually there's a line when they talk about when Han's like, I need to go out and find Luke. They're like, listen, our like the speeders we have still have not been fully adapted to the snow, to the weather. So like, we're not gonna like we'll work on it as quickly as we can, but like we're not gonna be able to. And so he's like, I'll take a tauntaun instead.
Oh, weird! Weird that the toys were all called snow speeders then.
Well, they're speeders, and they happen to be the ones they used on the snow planet, so they called them snow speeders.
Yeah.
But like tow cables, like if it's like, hey, does your truck have or does your truck or car have tow cable? Like you have a tow cable?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a weird thing to ask, but if you're if you think about it, these speeders were meant to be like transport vehicles, so they would probably have towing cables for things they needed to tow.
Yeah.
They're like these of course we've seen that like we know they're on their own heels, like they've been pushed back to Hoth, and they can't use their space fighters like that low to the ground with or at least I don't know what the reason why they couldn't use X-wings. But I digress. They had speeders. That's what they had, and they made do with it. And that's that's the rebellion.
I mean, like one of the again, I don't know if it was like a trivia in this, but like one of the conflicts and the butting heads between Lucas and Kurtz came in the idea of like Kurtz thought that Lucas was doing a lot of stuff or making decisions to like benefit the toy empire, maybe more so than like filmmaking. And so like you're introducing a whole bunch of new toys if you're doing snow speeders instead of X-wings again or something like that. So there's that like very cynical take on it, but there's also like, hey, there like it is cool to see other elements of this galaxy and other ideas and stuff like that. And so it's certainly like, again, like iconic moments of tripping the AT-ATs up and stuff like that, but it's just like even there I think about like, man, like if they had been flying X-wings, how would that fight have gone or something like that. So it's very convenient that they had these snow speeders with tow cables, I guess. But so
the story of convenience is Star Wars.
True.
I was just gonna say that I actually liked it's something that I've actually always enjoyed about Empire Strikes Back is the time concept, that this movie is sort of in a good way almost disorienting, because you're not able to like keep track of how much time is passing. It sort of feels like you're almost going like this circle. And I've always enjoyed that actually about the movie. Even like as a kid, I liked the fact that like it feels long in a good way. I guess for lack of a better like way to describe it. Cause like Luke's journey feels like it has taken weeks or months, and the way that they structure the chase with the Millennium Falcon through like the asteroid field and everything, it's like that always felt deliberately vague in how long everything is happening. So that I think it could work better with like they've been getting chased and bopping around and having issues for like weeks, and I'd be like, okay, like that would make sense to me, I guess. Like that's always in like in a really like inching way to where it's done almost in like phases of like, yeah, like we're getting chased by all this shit, and then like we're in the asteroid field now, and then like we're in the like belly of the beast, and now we have to like get to Bespin, but we can't like get to Bespin quickly because we're almost out of stuff, so we have to like take our time to Bespin. Like and then we're in Bespin. How long are we at How long are we on Cloud City for? We have no idea. There's never like anything there. It's like
I was gonna say, even before we get to Bespin, we have like, oh, let's hide ourselves on the Star Destroyer.
Yeah,
and yeah, we'll be here until they dump out their garbage. Maybe it takes 2 weeks before they're gonna do a next garbage dump.
Exactly, right?
Sure. I guess
I always like the way that it's written and structured.
Well, no. So Han says if they follow Imperial protocol, they'll dump their trash before they go to hyperspace.
Yeah.
And then after that, they said, hey, so, and it's important to note, they can't jump to hyperspace. They can't be like, oh, hey, yeah, even if you're on this part of the system, let's hyperspace and jump over there. If they're going the long way, it could take weeks for them to get to Cloud City, to Bespin. And when they're on Bespin, it's very clear by like wardrobe changes and everything, and the fact it's been days and nobody's seen C-3PO. Like there's a lot of things to say. Like they the journey that Han and Leia had. The exciting part was all up front. And then there's a lot of like backlog because it's very clear by the time we see them again before the dinner scene on Bespin, Han and Leia have gotten a lot more cozy. There's a lot more easy kissing going on.
Yeah, I enjoyed because I always viewed it as a kid of like almost like Luke's story with Yoda is like the main. That's like the main event. Like that's like the whole like driving force of like the middle act basically. And then, like, Han and Leia and Chewbacca's adventures and Millennium Falcon almost feel like a couple of, like, TV episodes. Of, like, yeah, like, they're just, like, a series of, like, adventures. They're each, like small, like, 15-minute increments. And I always really dug that, right? Like, it was actually one of my favorite things. Like, yeah, like, they're just, like, doing their own shit out here, completely independent, and they're just, like, a bunch of, like, essentially Clone War episodes. And it's kind of neat, right? Like it's really weird. Like I don't know how often it could work, but like I think it works here. And it allows for that sense almost when you do cut back to Luke and Yoda. It's like, man, no progress is being made here. Like that's something I made a note of to talk about. Is that like I love the fact that by the time Luke leaves Dagobah, he's made almost no progress. Like he's not like magically doing the rocks. He's not like fucking pulling the thing out of the swamp. Like he's just like still screwing up. He still has not learning. He's still letting his temper get the best of him, right? Like he's letting his doubt get the best of him. He's letting his fears get the best of them. And I always enjoyed the fact that like Luke's entire arc in this movie, his entire arc in the movie is just failure throughout the entire thing. Like he never gets a moment of like that went well, that went how I wanted it to go. Like even with like him going against like the AT-ATs, like it fucking totally went sideways and he just like barely got it with his life. And it's like everything with Yoda is him not doing it well and him not pulling it off, him having to like keep convincing Yoda to like, please train me, I'll be better next time, and he's just not. And then obviously his fight with Vader goes like catastrophically awry. And like I enjoyed that fact.
I think that
like
I think that what Luke learned, I think Luke did learn a lot, but his Luke was learning, but his testing with Yoda went poorly, and that's why Yoda was doing that. But when it came time for him to use what he had learned, like he learned to like when he leaps up into the like he's shoved down and Vader's like, that was easier than I thought, and like flips the switch with the Force. Luke leaps up, but does he leap up to just attack Vader again? No, he leaps up to climb into the wiring and get the carbonite duct, cuts the carbonite duct, like rips the carbonite duct open and like sprays him in the face. It's like, okay, that first off, him climbing up that's full on Yoda. That's full on Yodoing. And like doing the whole like his like the way he approached when he was thinking about it, when he was going at it. But by the time Vader decides enough is enough, I'm going to take full control, it's very clear. Vader decides, I'm going to use two hands, like, because at the beginning, just one hand with my lightsaber. Da-da-da. No respect for this kid. And by the very end, he goes, okay, playtime's over. Attack you, use the Force to send something at you. attack you, use the Force. Like Luke is, he's learned, and he's implementing things in a very smart way, and doing, like, when push comes to shove, he's doing it. But just he is constantly in situations that he is just outclassed and being outperformed, and just in a bad situation, and I love it. Because I love it when you don't have to put a hero in a dire situation that it's like, oh, they're going to die if they don't make it out of here. Or if, oh, this happened, it's going to be all over. But giving me a hero who, like you said, it's failure over and over again. He just hits failure. But what I love about it is that he doesn't give up. Oh, it turns out you are Master Yoda and you're saying you can't train me? Listen, I'm sorry. I'll do better. Let me try. And it's very much the, do or do not, there is no try. Luke does, eventually.
Yeah.
It's just, it takes some time. It takes him a while to get there. As a perpetual failure myself, I very much understand.
I mean, yeah.
No, I enjoy it too, yeah.
It's very much like Luke is staying true to his character, and he is like that same whiny farm boy that wanted to go to Tashi Station. He's impatient and he's impulsive, and so he, like, we see that when he goes in and faces himself in the tree thing, and we see that when he is quick to, like, and to mean to your stuff earlier there, Cam, like, he doesn't have faith in himself and his abilities because this is all very new to him, and he'd never really been exposed to any of this stuff. So, like, the idea of pulling an X-Wing out of the swamp, completely unfathomable to him. And
it's
stuff
impossible,
like that.
Right? Yeah.
When Yoda says, Luke's going into the cave and he picks up his belt and he's about to put it on, and Yoda says, "Your weapons you will need not."
Yeah.
Luke doesn't have faith that this scary place he's going into, he won't need his weapons. And so he belts up his weapons anyway.
Yeah.
And for me, that's such a critical scene, because it shows, like, even though he's been through all this training with Yoda, he still lacks faith in the power of the Force and what he is capable of doing with the Force.
And even just, he doesn't trust Yoda. He doesn't trust that Yoda's like not fucking with him or something like that. He, like,
to be fair, Yoda fucked with him for
True.
real bad.
Yeah, Yoda fucked him pretty hard at the intro. Yeah, to be fair.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I know Yoda hadn't seen a real life person in the flesh in a long time,
20 years. Yeah,
but like, kind of like fucked up. Just like the moment you meet this kid, I'm gonna go full on batshit crazy.
I'm gonna go fucking balls to the walls. Yeah, I enjoy, like, that's the thing. Like, everything about Luke's whole, just everything with Yoda is so good, right? Because, like, it's these two characters just, like, each dialed up to, like, 11, just clashing in, like, totally different ways, right? And yeah, like, I mean, obviously for me, like, the big, like, scene in the movie, I'd pick, like, one scene, one moment from the film is Luke trying to get the X-Wing out of the swamp, Yoda doing it, and then Luke's line of, like, "I can't believe it," Yoda going, "And that's why you fail," right? Like,
such a great
and, like,
line.
it like defines the whole thing. It's such a great moment, like, Yoda's face, right? And to a thing Cam said earlier, right? Like, if this, like Trevor said, was a movie made in 2021, Luke would get, like, knocked down, and there'd be, like, a whole fucking flashback to him, like, looking at the twin suns, and then, like, getting the courage to, like, do the thing. And it's like, yeah, like, I like the fact that we don't need this, like, inspirational, like, thing of, like, that's right, the twin suns, I wanted this adventure, I can do this, and, like, he's, like, doing it now. It's like, no, Luke fucking sucks, he can't do it, because he doesn't believe in it, and Yoda's gonna, like, bitch slap this guy, and, like, it's great. Like, for me, Yoda's in basically every single Star Wars movie after this one, after Empire Strikes Back, except for Force Awakens and Last Jedi. No, he's in Last Jedi. Yeah, it's my point. So just Force Awakens, and that's it after this. And he never almost feels, even when he's jumping around and bit-bopping around with Count Dooku and doing his shit out there, Empire Strikes Back and him lifting out the X-Wing, right? Because that is, like, the first time in the series, really, the saga, really, where you get, like, the sense of, like, oh, the Force and Jedi are just something else. Like, that to me still is a moment where it's like, oh, this is the most powerful like being that's ever existed in this fucking universe, right? Like that's a moment of him, like he gets to deliver that first moment of like, this is what the Force can be, right? And like even after you get Yoda in the prequels where like they're fucking like jacking off to like how powerful he is, it really is in 5 and 6 where like even on 6 he's on like his deathbed, I'm still like, yeah, this guy seems more powerful than he did in the prequel movies a lot of times. And it's like the way that they just approach his character in 5 and 6 and 5 with the X-Wing scene, like you get the sense of like this guy is a little green goblin, but like he's just so powerful, right? He exudes so much like abilities and energies, and even there you feel like you're just scratching the surface of what he can do. And I always liked that, right? Like I think the best moments of using the Force for me throughout this series, and we'll get to this a lot in the prequels and I'll come back to it even more so in the sequels, is that it's treating it almost in the sort of like, yeah, like mystical way, right? Like I like the fact in the original trilogy that like there aren't that many answers about the Force, right? And part of it is because like, yeah, like George Lucas was still kind of mapping out what he wanted it to be, and like that's kind of neat, right? Like it feels like you're learning along with him in its own way, right? And the fact that you don't have these answers, you don't have these things like, yeah, like
he's not doing it in the like J.J. Abrams like let's build a mystery box kind of way.
Yeah,
he's doing it in a natural like we're telling you the things you need to know. It's not because there's some like greater mystery saga that we're trying to solve or something like that. It is just like we're building the world as we tell this story, and we're telling you the things as 100%. We discover those things, instead of like a hey, 100%. I know everything I'm going to do. I'm just going to deliver it to you very piecemeal and be so clever
and not give you the answer.
And by the way, I don't even know what's in the mystery box anyway. I'm going to let 2 other people decide what's in the mystery box. And then when one of the people says that what was in the mystery box
I'll be back.
was unimportant, I'm going to come back and be like, no, the mystery box was important. I digress. But to the point of...
Stay tuned for that in a month and a half.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We're going to have some fun with that one, yeah.
Oh, man. No, I think that when it comes to the Force, this is the first time the Force is seen as something more metaphysical than just as ethereal as it's been.
Like a whisper, yeah, right?
Yeah, it's always been like the Force will guide you.
I mean, before it was faith. Yeah. Like we don't see any real use of the Force in what we now think of in A New Hope. It is just like Obi-Wan talking to Luke, and like Luke trusting that the Force is going to tell him, when to fire that missile kind of thing. Like seeing, as Logan kind of pointed out, seeing Yoda use the Force to lift this much bigger thing than him out of the swamp, like was, it is a magic, it is the space wizards and stuff. It is magical powers that,
but it's also
that had not been shown prior to this, that had not been manifested in anything apart from like earlier we see him playing around with stones or something like that. Seeing it go from that to this scale, that
doing the impossible, think,
right? This tiny guy is the most powerful being on this planet, let alone maybe the universe or galaxy as a whole. Like it is that like it's almost like greatness from small beginnings kind of vibe of it, in that, or just like
small endings in Yoda's case.
Expecting the unexpected, I guess, like
looks
aren't what they seem, all that kind of thing.
I will say that it also pays off. Vader has constantly told anybody who questions him your station pales in comparison to the power of the Force.
Yes, that does correct me.
You get the payoff,
because we have seen Vader force choke multiple people at that point, so we do know that there is like a tangible experience.
And in this film, we see him force choke people from a ship away.
Another ship.
The guy's on another ship. I see you. I'm choking you. I don't even have to lift my hand to do it. I'm just going to choke you with my mind. And it's great we see that, but we also see the payoff of, so Vader can choke people from couple 100 miles away. I don't know how far away those Star Destroyers are, but from a Star Destroyer length away. But for it to be not as something as small or minor, but to be something as much of a spectacle and a shock and awe as that. It also pays off when like Vader keeps talking about the Force is so powerful. Obi-Wan downplayed it a bit, and I feel like Obi-Wan's like, this is the Force 101. We're going to focus on the feeling, the movement, let it move.
Holding the lightsaber the right direction.
Yeah,
right?
so you don't put a hole in your head and ruin 20 years of preparation. Like the whole Jedi the Force 101, and Yoda's like
these are not the droids you're looking for. Yeah,
very simple, subtle things, but also Obi-Wan's been, doing kind of his own Yoda thing on Tatooine for such a long time that the skills that you need to focus on and use differ. Like Yoda could have shown up the moment he does, and been like, "I am Yoda. Lift your X-wing out of the swamp, like blow these trees around, be this epic, monstrous being in a tiny little form that you'd expect. Like, I am the great warrior." When Luke says, "You're not who I'm looking for. The person I'm looking for is a great warrior." Yoda, who is a great warrior, but has also learned, that's actually, sorry, we're putting that in the context of prequels again. My apologies. Yoda, who is supposedly a great warrior, who is this incredibly powerful being, possibly the most powerful being in the galaxy, goes all powerful, mocks it and makes fun of it. And he purposely comes in as a trickster character, like many in mythology are. The most powerful comes in pretending to be a goofball, which is why I'm the most powerful member of that nerdy site.
Cameron pulls face fucking Zeus out here.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Lightning bolts.
As Zeus, no, Zeus wasn't much of a trickster. He was just a rapist. That's a weird. I shouldn't have said. Anyway, Odin was like a trickster. But yeah,
Loki was the trickster, guys.
Well, Loki.
There's
was
a whole
the
show on
trickster.
D+ about him right now.
That's right.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah, but like this idea that this powerful character once again plays into mythology, which is Hero of a Thousand Faces, kind of leaking into Empire Strikes Back a little bit, and like I just love it. I love that it's this character, and it's like, and finally he just has to like get it through Luke's head. That moment is just such a moment of, you need to get this through your head. This thing that we're focusing on is so much larger than lifting stones. I'm teaching you to lift stones so you can lift, and not so you can lift a starcraft, but so you can like lift more than just what is physical. You can lift greater things than that. Because you have to put the rebellion on your back and carry it through at the end.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Get it.
Any other favorite moments or scenes anybody wants to celebrate and highlight?
Can we just talk about it? The "No, I am your father."
I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! Yeah, we haven't even done that, have we?
The most iconic scene
the most iconic scene in maybe cinema history, right? Yeah, it's like,
which
it's a great
is so
shout out.
ubiquitous that it's spoiled for virtually everybody. At any time, it's such a. I love watching video reactions of kids watching Star Wars for the first time and they don't know it, the twist, and it's so good. Which is why I always suggest you watch it in 4, 5, 6, then 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So you get the full on surprise, but that moment of just like, there are so many stories. Once again, going into the meta mythology of making of Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
The meta mythology of the trivia behind the supposedly like who knew what, who said what when.
The one I saw was effectively something like it was like most people thought that most people working on it thought that line was going to be like, "No, Obi-Wan killed your father," or something like that.
Yeah, that was in the original script, and then George Lucas walked out and said, "Hey,
hey Mark, so you're gonna know this, and like nobody else is gonna know." It was Irvin Kushner says. So I'm going to tell you this, and only me and George, and now you know this. So if anybody else finds out, we're going to know it was you.
Yeah. And so, and then, when he delivers that line, and it's the line of, because the close-up on Luke was, I don't believe the guy playing Darth Vader was there for that close-up.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that response that he gives that is Mark Hamill at his core, most basic acting. Because that is the first time he heard the line, "No, I am your father."
I know it's Mark Hamill just fucking acting out here, guys.
Yeah, and that heart, that moment
committed.
and once again, I said it earlier. This movie is a film about faith for Luke, for all of them, but especially for Luke. That's a moment of my core foundation that was set up in the previous film. My core foundation of what my belief is
Obi-Wan
about who the good
me,
people are, who the bad people are, has now been turned on its head. The man who just chopped off my hand told me that the man I trusted enough after the most traumatic thing in my life, the most traumatic experience of my life, having my aunt and uncle murdered and burned down, and like now being hunted by the Empire, this traumatic experience that I've lived through, the person who I trusted to see me through it, the person who I've trusted to see me through this entire journey, even after his death, and trusting in this thing that he taught me, told me the biggest lie of my life. That my father is alive. That the lie of my uncle and aunt, like all of that, the lies of my entire life are now laid before me. And when he just he has that breakdown, that sob, when he just cries and whines, like it's not possible. Like, and Vader just goes, "Search your feelings. You know it to be true." And Luke the moment he just looks inside of himself and he just knows that it's true, everything just falls into place, and it's this great moment of betrayal, and him constantly saying, "Ben, why didn't you tell?" Like that broken down, sobbing, like, "Ben, why didn't you tell me? Like, why did you lie, Ben?" Like, and not Obi-Wan, it's Ben. It's the old loopy, like
the
kind
intimacy
of
of age,
the eccentric man who lived out in the desert.
He usually only really knows him as Ben anyway.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, but it's such a personal moment of, like, because when he talks about Obi-Wan to other people, he says Obi-Wan, but when he's talking to Obi-Wan Kenobi, he calls him Ben, and he's calling out to Ben because Ben, we know Obi-Wan can appear, he can speak to Luke, even if Luke, like, he can do these things. And he's not. Yeah. He's not answering the question. And Luke just keeps asking it.
And he already told him, like, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to help you there." Like that when
I mean, your fight with Vader.
Yeah, he was
when
very
Luke
clear,
insisted on bouncing, he was like, "I can't. Where you're going, I can't help you. You're on your own for this."
I didn't take that as so much as I thought it was more of a, "Hey, you know how I helped you defeat the Death Star, like blow up the Death Star? I can't be with you in that moment for that this time around." But now it feels like, and it honestly feels like this really, there's an amazing cut of, it's contextualizing prequels, and I might have talked about it last time. I think I did. Yeah. The 5-minute cut between where it shows prequel footage. It's, I love this idea of Luke having the rug pulled out from under him, like the final rug of his faith, but then he still decides, "I'd rather die than walk down this path," because if you go back to the cave, if he follows these instincts of aggression and anger and hate and like all these emotions, these negative emotions, he will become Vader. When Vader reaches out his hand and says, "Join me," it's this great moment. Like there's so much that goes into this film that makes it great, and it's one of those like that. You can make that mental call back to the face in the mask. Yeah, and "Join me," hand reached out, light reflecting off of the helmet, and Luke just choosing a, like, you can say, "Oh, he's choosing to," like, I don't take it as he chose, like, I've thought about it, I was like, was he choosing to have faith that he'd survive that? I don't think so. I think that he thought whatever is down there is better for me. Like, the Force is guiding me to go down there. This is not the right decision to stay with him.
I don't even put that level of like into it. I put into like I can't be this, or like, I mean, there might even be like, well, I'm just gonna kill myself by falling down this hole, because he doesn't know what's at the end, and he very nearly does. Like it is to go back to Logan's point of like just repeat failure. Like the fall is a fail, and then like he finally stops, and then a thing opens up and he falls more, and then
it's such an amazing moment. Yeah.
And he has one hand, and his hand is like cauterized off, and he's like hanging on while he's crying and sobbing, and then like, but also like reaching out to the Force to contact who hears him.
I think that the whole thing with Vader and Luke at the end is, I mean, there like are entire books written about that could be written about just that one scene, obviously. Like, but like the level, like almost taking it out of Star Wars itself and taking it from a larger pop culture perspective, like it is the ultimate like middle finger to like everything that came after, right? Like every single twist is now judged in the context of like, yeah, but like Star Wars did it first, right? Like it's that thing of like every twist is just like an imitation of Vader being Luke's dad, right? Like it's that thing of like it almost like changed movie-going expectations, right? Because like if I don't want to be like movies were simpler back in the day because like they were obviously complex affairs, but like it did feel like you would never have guessed like, oh, Vader is going to be the main hero's father. That's not going to be something I'm going to expect really. And now it's always like, oh, we're doing a trilogy of films. The bad guy might have some sort of connection, probably not the dad, but some sort of bond, or he knew the dad or something like that, right? Like, I feel like it reframed how you tell like trilogies or stories or series and how the characters and villains are all like intermeshed to each other.
Yeah, I found myself thinking a lot about that, like what a brilliant choice it is, because obviously now we have like a personal connection between these characters, and that's one of the things, you know, when we talk about like Spider-Man and all of Spider-Man's best villains, it's because those villains have some personal connection to Peter, as well as, you know, the antagonistic relationship with Spider-Man or something like that. And so it's now having to like combine both of those worlds, and everybody's worlds are coming in on one another. And so that is I mean, just from a pure storytelling point, and then like everything becomes like, oh well, it was so obvious in hindsight because Vader is just Dutch for father, and so of course it was just and stuff like that. Or like one of the things I'm looking at is
Dutch in 1977, right?
Is that the thought that came through everybody's mind when it's like, it's the greatest twist of all time, and then immediately flash back to when I watched Pitch Perfect, and Anna Kendrick goes, "Wait, is it like his father? Mm-hmm. How did you know? Vader means father in German. Duh." Yeah. It's like, okay, Anna Kendrick, okay.
Yeah. Or another one that I just saw here is talking about the movie's novelization came out a month before the movie actually released, which, you know, gives away that because obviously it's telling that beat, and I like in that moment I think of what a weird, just in our lifetime even, how spoiler culture has kind of like changed how these things happen. Because I remember, like, we'll get to it obviously in Phantom Menace, but I remember the soundtrack listing for the CD of Phantom Menace coming out, and one of the tracks basically being like Qui-Gon's funeral or something like that. So it was like, well, clearly that character's not going to make it. Or the idea that the original Lego Star Wars game, which was the prequels, came out a month or two before Revenge of the Sith actually comes out in theaters and stuff like that. So like the game reveals the end of Revenge of the Sith before the movie did and stuff like that. It's just like so weird to think about how those things, especially surrounding Star Wars, have changed over the last 20, 30 years. To that the sequel trilogy tried to keep everything lock and key. Like we knew from the original like cast photos that Mark Hamill was involved somehow in Force Awakens, but so he's just kind of like constantly like, is he going to show up? What's gonna, like, when's he going to be here? And the way that is handled and stuff is just like, oh, like that was much more, let's play this really close to the vest. In very fascinating ways. But yeah, obviously, like, I know I Am Your Father. I pulled up the little trivia bit here. In fact, only 5 people eventually knew about the ending before the movie's release. George Lucas came up with the idea in a second draft after the death of Lee Brackett. Irvin Kershner, who was informed of the choice during story conferences, screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan, who also learned during story and script conferences, Mark Hamill informed shortly before the shooting of the infamous scene, and then James Earl Jones told during the recording sessions for the final dub, who believed and James Earl Jones believed Darth Vader was lying, so he did not believe that it was like a genuine.
This is what
I'm telling you this moment kind of thing. So yeah, like those 5 people knew, because the thing basically says that David Prowse on set said Obi-Wan killed your father, and so that's what the crew thought or were expecting going into that moment. which is also would
David
have
Cross is
also
like, Mark
been
Hamill
a very
really overreacting right here, guys.
yeah. Which, I mean, that in and of itself would have also been a significant reveal, especially
Yeah.
given the relationship that Obi-Wan and Luke have, garnered over the last movie, or last two movies. But yeah, this certainly takes it up a significant notch. And it's basically like, anytime you make jokes about like spoiling a movie, it's this or it's Bruce Willis was dead the whole time. Because those are your, most iconic twists in cinema.
They're great
and
cinema
so,
twists, yeah.
I will never forget what happened.
I did just want to briefly...
Go ahead, Logan.
I was just going to say, like, I briefly, because Trevor brought it up, but like, as a kid, I had the same thought as James Earl Jones, right? Where I was like, you're so, I was like, I don't know what to think from this news, right? Like, it's just like, it broke
he's
my
on
6-year-old
the
mind,
dark
probably.
side. Of course he's lying.
Yeah, like, I was like, what are you talking? And so, like, and again, it's enough of a thing where, like, enough people would have thought about it where, like, they directly address it in 6. Like, there's a whole scene where they're like, yeah, like, is this true? Like, it's not just like a given that, yeah, like, he's the dad. It's like they have a whole conversation with Yoda where it's like, is this real? Like, is he my dad? And even then, Yoda is very fucking cryptic about it. It's like his dying breath, basically. He's like, yeah, peace out. And then, like, they make it like a whole scene in the next movie to, like, confirm for legit reasons, like, it's the dad. And that's when I was like, all right, yeah, Vader's a dad. So for a long time, I associated Vader being the dad more with 6, where it's like confirmed, than with 5, where it's first like revealed, because of that fact of like, I don't trust this motherfucker. I don't trust Vader for 1 second.
Oh yeah,
and it's weird because I came into it I literally caught the last like 15 minutes of the film as a kid, and was like enamored with the concept, and then watched the film. So I already had that spoiled long before then. I've never watched Star Wars without the context that Darth Vader's Luke's father. I just realized just now. I've never had that as a context that I would actually think about.
It's going back to the hypothetical earlier of like, what would YouTube and Twitter response to Empire Strikes Back would be. It would be think piece after think piece after think piece of like, is he telling the truth or not? And you'd have these debates over whether or not Darth Vader is really Luke's father, and people would be like, well, German actually Vader means father, so yeah, there's a pretty good credence for why that would be.
Yeah,
it's not just that though. It's also like, I'm sure people had those arguments back in the 80s.
Yeah,
but people
that's
didn't have YouTube
that's
or
what
podcasts and everything. Yeah,
that's what Logan is kind of alluding to, is like the conversation around the movie had that enough that they needed to really kind of like put a pin in it.
There's a whole scene
in Return of the Jedi and say and confirm that it wasn't a lie, that it is the truth. And here's extra icing on the cake. They're also brother and sister. So
well, it's who was the other?
Yeah.
Who was the other that Yoda mentioned? And
exactly.
It's like turns out,
and that would be
Leia.
here are our top 7 guesses for who the other might be.
Oh, right, so good.
Yeah,
it's so good. I love.
And somebody
love
would
that.
throw in there Wedge Antilles. I think it's Wedge, because he showed up. He was there alongside Luke, and so stuff like that. Like I'm sure
It's
real
Big,
brotherly
Big
affection
survived
and
the
New
Death
Hope,
Star
yeah.
run, guys. I promise you, Biggs
Yeah.
is alive.
That'd
He's
be
the other one.
That would be a fun YouTube channel to make, like right now, as a performance art kind of piece. Would be like, let's do YouTube as if we didn't know what happened after these things. And okay, we're gonna watch. I've just watched Star Wars episode. Like, here's what I think about coming after and doing that. Like, just I think that'd be a fun like sketch comedy kind of thing
Well,
to do.
yeah, you wouldn't even call You wouldn't say Star Wars Episode 5. You just would call.
I mean,
it
exactly.
Empire Strikes Back.
Or yeah, I mean, like, and even the first one would be like, it's not A New Hope. It's just Star Wars.
It's just Star Wars.
It's not Episode 4 yet. Yeah, all those things.
Oh, it's so good. I love that idea of it being like that. What was I gonna say? Oh, another thing about how different spoiler culture has gotten. I don't think spoiler culture has ever recovered from Deathly Hallows spoilers, because people went.
Oh,
no, not even Deathly Hallows. Half-Blood Prince is
Half-Blood Prince.
That's what broke people.
Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay, because when I think about I think
for
about
sure
it, it's not
Half-Blood
the Dumbledore
Prince.
dies. It's the
It's Dumbledore
a
dies.
dude
Yeah.
recording himself, like with his camera pointing down at a group of people, like hundreds of people, like not 100, like maybe 100, like 200 plus people in line to buy the book, and he calls out, has like a printed out copy from the internet, and says, on page this, Hedwig dies, and then reads out the line about Hedwig
No.
dying.
Yeah, Hedwig dies.
No.
Yeah,
And
it's been so
and
long,
just
Hedwig
seeing
dies,
people
yeah.
go like, just like screaming at him. I'm like, oh yeah, this is when like spoiler culture like snapped the universe.
Oh yeah, no.
But I guess Dumbledore dies might be a better.
That absolutely came with Half-Blood
It's-
Prince. Spoilers obviously for
Oh,
that
I
series,
just
but
realized
like
I
Snape
was
kills
at-
Dumbledore was a whole thing. Like
Yeah,
that was
I just realized
Yeah.
the book had just come out. We got it the morning I was going off to scout camp for a week. So I was out of civilization for the week that it happened. So I found out about it. I was like, okay, cool. I came back and everybody's like, oh, isn't this incredible and amazing? I'm like, yeah. And it's like, I missed whatever the spoiler culture around that must have been.
See,
That's wild. I didn't even think about that.
yeah.
Half-Blood Prince for me is like the earliest like thing I remember even like saying the word spoilers because my brother fucked me. Like he did like the ultimate mental mind game for me where like because back then we would share the books, right? And like there's a whole thing about like us doing it for Order of the Phoenix, which is my favorite, on the drive to like Colorado from Missouri and like trading back and forth in like the back seat. And we did the same thing a few years later for Half-Blood Prince, and he got to the end first. And one day he just like had finished, and I was still like trying to catch it up. And he goes, like, who do you think dies, right? Because like there was the whole thing of like one person dies. There's like a major character that dies in the book. Like that was like the big buzz around the book even before it came out, right? And so it was like, who do you think dies? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like I don't know. I'm not sure. Like I kind of rattled off some guesses. Like Dumbledore was like safe to me. He was sacred, right? And he just goes like, Dumbledore dies, and just like walked away. And I was like, oh, all right, like sure he does, right? Like, and it just totally
and then
dismissed
you
it.
get
And he's
to that
like,
point
Dumbledore,
and Dumbledore dies.
yeah, he's like, Dumbledore dies, and he like, and just walked away. And I was like, okay. And then I get to that part in the book, I was like, mother, like he totally just spoiled the book for me and got to do it scotch free, right? And so years later, I was furious when I found out. I was so mad. Years later, I decided to enact my own revenge, and like mental fuck like one of my cousins when he played BioShock because he did it all in like one sitting basically, and I like sat next to him and watched it, and throughout the game I would just keep saying, would you kindly do things, and just like not do anything, like just like as like a casual thing.
That's not payback.
And he never caught on.
That's not payback. You did that to your cousin.
I enjoyed it.
You had it.
Yeah,
that's
I
not
enjoyed it.
payback.
That's
You're
just
not
I
paying
passed
back
it on
your
to the next
brother.
generation.
It's a cycle.
Yeah.
You're
Just
you
pass
are
it on to the next generation.
You are the
But-
asshole now.
Anyway.
Well, my brother broke me, and so yeah, it was great.
Payback. I'm waiting.
Trevor, bring us home.
I'm like, I'm not going to sit through this entire story. Did you pay back your brother, or was it just you?
Oh no,
Yeah, no.
no, it's
like
yeah.
I
No.
mean, those are again always going back to the conversation last week of like it's not about a single moment. So yes, even if No,
Obviously,
I Am Your
yeah.
Father is spoiled for you, it's still everything leading up to that moment is still going to be impactful. And the most one of the most recent
and the
examples I
performances,
have,
obviously, yeah.
of course, yeah. Was like right before I went in to see Endgame, I looked at like a tweet, and not even like it was like somebody's reply to another tweet or something like that, and I saw a moment that was turned out to be a spoiler kind of thing. But even so, like there was so much greatness in that even knowing that was coming or having the idea planted that was coming, I was because part of it was like, well, maybe that's just somebody being a troll and it's not a real spoiler or something like that. But
Yeah.
or obviously like The Last of Us 2, a lot of people were freaking out about stuff last year and stuff like that. Like they happened, but
The Last of Us
taken
1. yeah.
in context of the piece, it's still like somebody pulling that moment out from under you isn't going to completely ruin it. Yes, there might be cool things. Even today, the idea that Tiny Tina's Wonderlands or whatever was revealed after having been leaked or something like that. It's like, yeah, it might have been cooler a little bit if we didn't know about that and it had been a surprise, but it's not, it doesn't take away from what that product is. Like a very momentary one-time thing being a surprise is not going to ruin every other, like, especially watching Empire, we all know this big reveal, yet we've still watched it and loved this movie time and time and time and time and time again. It doesn't, like, knowing that after the first time does not change that fact for us. So
To quote Trevor Starkey, it's the journey, not just these individual moments of the endings. I mean, like, people have got like we've gone almost like too far with spoilers, and like obviously don't spoil things. Don't be a dick, right? Don't ruin things for people. But like
it is that
thing.
don't
Like,
be an asshole. That's
yeah, like it's so much more. Obviously, like very rarely is a story defined by a single moment, by like a single got you moment, right? Like usually. And hopefully it's way more than some of its parts and everything building up to that and everything in the aftermath of it too, right? And I think that very much rings true for the reveal here, right? And the consequences that come. And like Mark Hamill's performance in the scene, I think is just excellent. And the repercussions of it that lead into Return of the Jedi. And yeah, I mean, like I also had one with in-game, and I'd be curious maybe off the podcast if we had the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like just. Yeah, don't be an asshole, but like also don't get like don't hyperventilate about spoilers either. It's gonna be okay. Like it won't ruin the thing for you, and maybe you'll be lucky like me and get a fake Last of Us spoiler, and then play the game and find out that neither one of them died, and you'll be like, oh man, okay, well, I'm both happy and also somehow sadder. So it's okay.
There you go. All right. Let's dive into the report card then, where we grade from A+ to F. So Cameron, what do you want to give for The Empire Strikes Back as its grade?
A+ with a silver bullet, man.
A+ with a silver bullet. All right. Right up there, pairing you alongside Episode 4. Logan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean it's an A, right? I think it's just a great movie. I think it is a better film than A New Hope. I think I would enjoy to watch it more by a closer margin than I think it's like better made. But I mean, yeah, it is The Empire Strikes Back. It is one of the defining movies, really the last like 4 decades, and again, one of the 3 or 4 best sci-fi movies ever made.
Yeah. So I will be the odd man out here and give it an A+, being different from my grade for A New Hope. So even despite my gripes and grievances with it, as I touched on earlier, I do still think it is a better overall experience than A New Hope, and builds on that. Like A New Hope, it's Mass Effect 3 to Mass Effect 2 for me, whereas like, yeah, A New Hope is a better standalone thing, just like Mass Effect 2 is a better standalone experience, but as like the next chapter in this story that we're telling, I think A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back tells a better story overall, much like I think Mass Effect 3 is a better game overall. But I know I'm, not maybe not the majority on that thought. No idea what Frank thought. When he comes back, we will ping his thoughts on Empire. But now to rank these. And since Frank isn't here, we'll go ahead and rank without him, which makes it easier because it's not going to be a 2-2 split, and then I don't need to bring in RNGesus die. But where do we say? So where do we say this falls between 4 and 5? Is this better than 4? Yes,
I think it's above 4.
Yeah,
for sure.
We're all
I think we all agree on that, right?
Okay, because Cam had said that 4 he prefers 4. Yeah. But he also said that, like, yes, 5 is a better movie kind of thing.
If you want me to rank the Star Wars movies, I will always put 4 above. Like, honestly, I won't spoil it next week, but 4, I put it above A New Hope for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Empire stands as that movie.
Cool. So our ranking, as it stands currently. Maybe I'll try and put together a graphic for this or something like that. Probably not. But is Empire Strikes Back number 1, and then Star Wars: A New Hope number 2. Cool. Extra credit if you like this one. Once again, we have pretty much every movie in the Skywalker saga, save one. So we have Return of the Jedi, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. Then we get The Mandalorian. And then we get The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. So A New Hope is not.
A New Hope is that's weird.
I mean, it is, unless you think of the fact that, like, oh, if you're watching this one, you've probably already watched A New Hope. So yeah, we'll go ahead and pull that from the listing.
Maybe.
But yeah, that is that is where the ranking or the extra credit lie there. Extracurriculars. Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus? As I mentioned earlier, as I alluded to earlier, I watched the debut of Loki, which came out yesterday as we're recording this, and it was one of those like I had forgotten it came out, and then I woke up at like randomly at 3 a.m. and was like, that's right, Loki's out. Let me go and watch that first episode. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoy just another peek into a weird pocket of the Marvel universe and the potential that it has there. And Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston are phenomenal in it, and so looking forward to seeing the rest of that series. And then I'm also just regularly keeping up with High School Musical, the musical, the series, and the Bad Batch. I've not been too over the moon on the last couple episodes of the Bad Batch, so hopefully it'll pick back up or something. But I'm still I'm watching it, and then I just kind of I watch it and forget about it. Is pretty much what my relationship with the Bad Batch has been so far. Anybody else watching anything
on Disney? I haven't since last week. I haven't Empire's the only thing I've not been watching a lot of stuff. I'm trying to play video games right now.
Cool, fair enough. You, Logan?
No, but this is my reminder to watch at least the premiere episode of Bad Batch by next week, and I'll report back with my thoughts on it.
There you go.
Or I already did the premiere, I guess. I think, but the second episode.
Did you watch the Aftermath premiere, the 70-minute premiere?
The hour-long one, right? Because I thought we were gonna do a D+ show on that, right? So I'm pretty sure I had watched it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you I think Shrav got sick or something, so you basically had to duck out at the last minute. So yeah, it was just me and Cam on that one. Okay, cool. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D+ Show. Thank you guys for joining me to talk about Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. I also had to figure out the proper nomenclature and where does a semicolon go in this versus where does a dash go in this? Because I was like, is it Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope or whatever? And no, it is Star Wars episode number dash and then subtitle. So got that properly out there for A New Hope, and we'll have that continued moving forward. Anyway, you can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I do. Keep an eye out because there's an upcoming episode of That Conversational Podcast that'll be coming out next week.
Good to know. This is news to me.
It's because it was just confirmed while we were podcasting.
Okay.
So it is going to see the return of an old site member for a little guest appearance, and it's very exciting for us, for him and I for sure, and for people like us. But who's to say it's going to be exciting for everybody else? I don't know, but that's what That Conversational Podcast is all about.
So it sounds like you and Christian are going to talk about some weird anime thing. Cool.
I was gonna keep it secret that it was Christian.
Well, you sprung it on me, so I'm springing it on everybody else.
That's fair. Literally, I got the
especially
back saying he had
when you were
I was fine to record.
Yeah, when you were like, it's me and him. I was like, well, I already didn't think it was gonna be Chloe, so I was like,
either, yeah,
and it's probably not gonna be Ben. So yeah,
no.
That makes it Christian. Cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to having him back on the
Love
site. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. Anything you want to give some love to there, Logan?
I will give a shout out to myself and Trevor's Let's Play of Operation Tango. The game's real fun. Real excited to play more of that and get those Let's Plays up. Otherwise, just check out everything on the site. Check out everything over at That Nerdy. And I'll also give a supplemental shout out to this week's episode of That News You Care About, actually, where we all gave our E3 predictions. Some of us have already struck out on some, which is impressive and takes some skill. But I'm
I checked.
really for
I
it
thought
to go
I had...
across the board. Yeah. Oh, did you not?
Technically, I might still have hope on that one. So yeah, I basically had predicted that
okay.
Because I tweeted out I'm already down one because they revealed Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and my prediction is at the Gearbox event that we will get our first look at the Borderlands movie, and that the cast will introduce something. So we could technically still get that, and I might still get half a point on that or something. But yeah, I'm not getting the half a point of it will be debuted by Borderlands cast members or something like that. But yeah, we'll see there, because there is still the Gearbox showcase Saturday or Sunday. I don't remember what it is, but yeah, we'll see.
I just now
we'll see where the
realized
rest
what
of the
would make me
predictions go.
excited for the movie. If I would be excited for the Borderlands movie, if and only if Danny DeVito was voicing Claptrap. That's it.
Nope, that's Jack Black.
Oh wow, such a specific.
I know it's Jack Black, and I like
request.
that it's Jack Black. But if it was Danny DeVito, it would
I love
make me
Jack
excited.
Black.
All right,
I
weirdo.
love Danny DeVito.
I think the movie's gonna be fine. I'm still think that.
Yeah. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and I will echo Logan's shout out. Please go check out especially episode 2 or part 2 of our Operation Tango.
Trevor did a great job.
Because that was my first time editing together multiple like camera angles and stuff like that. So I had to sync it up. And Logan deleted out like the sync point that we had established before recording. So I had to go sync it off another pivotal moment of the Let's Play, which I had some fun doing. And then I basically learned how to how to edit, switching between the two, and then people were kind enough to give me like pointers on how to do that more effectively and efficiently moving forward. But yeah, it's a fun little one. So I basically switch back between my perspective and Logan's perspective throughout the Let's Play, because it's a really cool game where either one of us has no idea what the other one is really looking at or seeing. So it is all about kind of communicating that effectively to the other person. So go check that out. It's a fun one. Really enjoying as Logan is playing through that game. So keep an eye out for more of that. I'll also give a tease that I sat down and am recording, or have recorded, or will continue to record probably some Let's Plays on Final Fantasy VII Remake, as well as the Yuffie Intermission DLC. And then also in an hour from right now, as I'm saying these words, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart goes live. So I'm going to definitely sit down and record a Let's Play
of
the beginning of that. And those may go up next week in lieu of more Operation Tango, just because we're also going to have like E3 stuff and Logan's traveling and stuff. So we might not be able to record another episode of Operation Tango quite yet. So we will have plenty of the hot newness to keep the Let's Plays going. But check those out. New Let's Plays go live every Tuesday and Thursday, while our podcasts go live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so check all that stuff out. You can find all of that over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always help support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you once again for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the force be with you.